Ever feel like trying to understand financial markets is kind of like, well, trying to predict the weather? You can look at the clouds all you want, but wouldn't it be nice to have some seriously insightful tools at your disposal?
Absolutely. And today, we're diving into something that might just give you a whole new perspective, the Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator.
Okay, that sounds a little intimidating. Is this going to require a PhD in math?
Not at all. It's more like, imagine having a way to see the market's rhythm, its own kind of heartbeat, if you will.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more about this rhythm.
Well, the Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator is based on the work of J.M. Hurst, a brilliant engineer who believed that market cycles, yes, actual cycles, play a huge role in how markets move.
Cycles, like ups and downs, don't we already know about that?
Yes, but Hurst went deeper. He dedicated years to analyzing market data and found that these cycles happened over different time frames. You have short-term cycles, maybe lasting days, and then these much longer ones, spanning years. And here's the key. He argued that a good chunk of these movements, around 23%, aren't just random. They're actually predictable.
Hold on, predictable. That goes against a lot of what we hear, doesn't it?
It does, which is what makes Hurst's work so fascinating. He even laid out these 10 key statements, almost like a manifesto, challenging traditional market theories.
Like what kind of statements? Give me an example.
Well, one that always throws people off is his idea that how long a price trend has been going, whether a stock has been up or down, it doesn't actually tell you how much longer it'll last.
Whoa, really? So much for buy low, sell high.
Yeah.
So where does this oscillator thing come in? How does it actually find these cycles?
That's where things get really cool. It uses something called spectral analysis, which sounds complicated, but stick with me.
Okay, I'm listening.
Imagine you're listening to an orchestra, right? There's a whole lot going on. Violins, cellos, drums. Spectral analysis is like being able to isolate each of those instruments, hearing their individual frequencies clearly, even though they're playing together.
So instead of musical instruments, we're isolating different cycles in market data.
Exactly. The oscillator uses what are called bandpass filters. It's kind of like tuning a radio to a specific station, but instead of finding your favorite song, we're honing in on these cycles, 10 days, 20 days, even years.
So instead of just seeing a jumbled mess on a stock chart, you can actually visualize those rhythms, those distinct cycles.
You got it. And here's what makes it so powerful. The oscillator takes all those complex calculations and turns them into a format that's easy to understand. Often, different cycle lengths will be color-coded so you can see at a glance, say, a short-term cycle clashing with a longer one.
Ah, so it's like having X-ray vision into the market, seeing beneath the surface. But it's one thing to just see these cycles. How does that translate into something a trader can actually use?
Well, think of it this way. The oscillator can actually pinpoint where those cycles are in their phases. It can highlight a potential peak, suggesting prices might be headed down, or a trough, which could be a buying opportunity, all based on these rhythms. Even those midpoints, where things might be shifting, called nodes.
So it's like having a heads up, knowing the market might be about to change its tune.
Exactly. And that's incredibly valuable for anyone trying to navigate the market, right? Now, no tool can predict the future perfectly. Markets are complex.
Sure, there are always surprises.
Absolutely. But the Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator, it gives traders this extra layer of analysis, helps them make smarter decisions, potentially.
I can see how that would be huge for anyone who trades, having that extra edge. Can you walk me through a specific scenario just to really bring this home?
Let's say you're looking at a stock, and the oscillator is showing that the 20-day cycle is, say, getting close to a peak.
So that could mean it's time to maybe think about selling.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, this upward swing, it might be running out of steam based on this historical pattern.
Instead of just riding it out and hoping for the best.
You've got this insight, this heads up, and it's not just about when to buy or sell. You can even use the oscillator to figure out where to set your stop loss orders, to protect yourself.
Ah, so if you see a potential low coming up based on those cycles.
You could put that stop loss in just below that level, just in case. Minimize those potential losses.
Okay, so it's all about managing risk, making those smarter trades. This is really fascinating stuff. But earlier, you mentioned something about market sentiment, right? That the Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator can actually give you clues about that, too. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so on top of all this cycle analysis, the oscillator, it also incorporates these sentiment indicators. Think of it like, getting a read on the overall mood of the market. Is it optimistic? Bearish? The oscillator has emotional intelligence.
In a way.
It uses these icons and colors to give you that quick snapshot. So you might see a green icon pop up. That could mean the oscillator's picking up on a bullish sentiment, like, hey, things are looking up based on its
And
calculation.
I'm guessing a red icon means the opposite.
You got it. Potential downturn on the horizon. And keep in mind, these aren't just random guesses, right? The oscillator is analyzing all sorts of factors, like the amplitude, the wavelength of the cycles.
So a longer wavelength might suggest a stronger trend.
Yeah, exactly. So you're getting a really nuanced view, like looking at the market's emotional temperature.
This is incredible. I mean, we're talking about going way beyond just looking at basic charts and graphs. It sounds like the Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator could be a game changer for traders of all levels. But for those who are maybe just wrapping their heads around all of this, what's the key takeaway? What do they really need to understand? It really boils down to this. The Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator, it's a reminder that markets, they don't just move randomly. There are these underlying currents, these cycles, driving those movements.
Instead of just seeing the waves crashing on the shore, we're starting to understand the tides, the forces that are creating those waves in the first place.
Exactly. Now, we talked about this earlier. Even Hurst acknowledged that a good chunk of market movement, it is random. You can't predict everything.
Hmm.
But even with that unpredictability, just understanding that cyclical nature, it's huge.
Okay, so we're not saying you can time the market perfectly,
Never.
but having this tool, it's like you said, having an extra layer of analysis, seeing those potential turning points.
And that can make all the difference. But this whole idea of cycles, it does make you wonder, if we can start to see these patterns, does that mean on some level the market's future is, I don't know, predetermined?
Ooh, that's a big one. It's like, are we all just along for the ride and the tracks are already laid out?
Right. It's a question that's been around forever, and I don't think there's an easy answer. But, even with these amazing tools like the Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator, we have to remember we're still dealing with human behavior, and that is inherently well.
Unpredictable.
Exactly. We make decisions based on emotions, fear, greed, not just cold, hard data.
Right. So even if these cycles suggest, I don't know, a certain path, there's always that human element that can throw things off course.
That's what keeps it interesting, right? It's this constant dance between these patterns, these cycles, and that element of unpredictability.
So it's like the oscillator is giving us this incredible insight into the order within the chaos, but it doesn't take away that chaos entirely.
Beautifully put. And, I think that's a good place to leave it for our listeners today. This Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator, it's a powerful tool, no doubt, but it also sparks these bigger questions about the nature of markets, human behavior. It's fascinating stuff.
Absolutely. And hey, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to crack the code to figure out that perfect balance between predictability and, well, the wild card of human nature.
I'd love to see that.
That's all the time we have on this deep dive into the Hurst Spectral Analysis Oscillator. We hope you found this exploration as thought-provoking as we did. Until next time, keep those minds curious and those portfolios growing.